And you were one of the keynote speakers at the Buzz conference last week. And we were hoping to get you on beforehand or even there, but we're really happy to have you on afterwards. So maybe before we get into your whole history and background, is why would they reach out to you to be a keynote speaker to the Buzz conference? We sort of know the answer, but I think anybody watching or listening this would want to know that answer.
Well, what I had spoken about at the Buzz conference was Natasha the Residences, which is a building that I collaborated on with Lantera Developments. And it's a building downtown Toronto, 47 stories, right on Adelaide Street. So that was, we were talking about humanizing the brand, and Natasha the Residence, which has had so much success. We sold out all the allocations that we put forward within, I think it was the first 4 or 5 weeks. So I guess that was why.
That's awesome. How does it feel to have, your brand humanized out there and used in such a powerful way?
I mean, it was incredible because I had the opportunity to really look at a real estate or development project from the inside out. So we're used to promoting something, once it's materialized a little bit. In this particular case, I had the opportunity to work with Alessandro on, the guts of a building, and really look at naming all the units. How are people going to truly use the space and live in the space? Because my office has been on Adelaide Street for almost 20 years, that's where I live, work, and play. And so having this building just a couple blocks away, I had that insight of like, how are people truly going to use this space? And so knowing that we have units that people live in that are around 600 square feet or 700 square feet or even 500 square feet or less, we wanted to make sure that when we're considering their living space, it's not just the 500 square feet that they're living in, but they actually have 20,500 square feet of space that they're living in, because we have 20,000 square feet of amenity space. But then we also wanted to ensure that that amenity space was truly useful for them, and that it wasn't just, let's put in the same old into these amenities that sometimes people use, sometimes they don't. We got really creative with that 20,000 square feet to ensure that it was useful for the person that is living downtown.
So is it targeted for a particular generation, or like for certain types of lifestyles, or are there different amenities targeted for different people in different stages of their life?
I mean, I would say all of that for sure. But we're taking into consideration that we wanted to build a sense of community. And so it wasn't just about living in your apartment. Like I've lived in New York for 20 years. I've always gone back and forth. So I've had my apartment there. I have my home in Toronto. And so I've lived both in a condominium, and I've also lived, in a home. And we wanted to bring the two together. So when you are living in, a building, how do you make sure that you feel that same sense of community as you would if you're feeling in a home? So we created indoor and outdoor space that felt like it was an extension of your unit. We have the whole work life is going to, it's changed after COVID. Even in our office, I've decided we're only going to go back to the office 2 days a week, as opposed to the full 5 days. And I don't think that's going to change for us. It works for the team. It works for me. The only thing that we'll have to figure out is we're paying, $30,000 a month in rent, so for 8 days a week. So, and I think a lot of businesses are kind of looking at, what is the future of that? So when you think about Natasha the Residences, we have a work area that feels more like a lounge than a real work area. We created a laundrette, which is super cool because it's more of a place for people to come and feel that sense of community. So you have a washer and dryer in your suite, but we've also created this laundrette where you can go do your, maybe some of your larger pieces, but you also feel that connection to someone else. So you might have a coffee, you might just chill. So you feel like this is where you live, like really live, as opposed to that's my unit, if that makes any sense.
it's how you interact with the space, right? And I think you've been in Adelaide Street for so long that you really figure out the functionality and truly merge the live and the work aspect, and really figured out, what people want in their everyday lifestyle, to really, get them that sense of community and really get them to really interact with the space that's available to them.
For sure. I mean, we have a social media room. So as an example, I believe that the moment you're on social media, whether you do it for work or not, you're a brand. So even if you're applying for a job and you're not in the digital or marketing space, the first thing employers look at is like, oh, let me look at their social media to see if like you're using good judgment.
Right.
And so we have a social media room where you can use it for, personal reasons, or you can use it for work reasons. We have a pet spa. So just taking all of that into consideration of how people might actually use the space. We have like an area for, it's a piano room basically. So as soon as you get off the elevator, there's a baby grand piano that plays on its own. And so there's that vibe. We were trying to capture cool vibe and useful space, but in the most chic way possible. And so it was a really awesome project to work on, because I really felt that between Lantera, Alessandro, and myself, we were able to bring this project to life. And then Montana Steel packaged it all up for us in the perfect way. So
that's a pretty unique type of lifestyle building for Toronto, the Toronto market anyways, but with your travels and living in New York, have you been exposed to similar types of buildings that already exist there?
For sure. I mean, when you think about, I don't know if they're similar per se, but I think where a lot of buildings probably miss out is they're trying to get the building up so quickly that they're, and because the reality is the real estate market is so hot in all the major markets that you're selling to investors. So they're not always thinking about the end user. But the reality is, even if you're selling it to an investor, the end user, whether you're renting it or whether you're, buying as an end user, it's still that person that's living in it. And I just think that
to live there.
That's exactly it. And I just think that developers really do need to be thinking about how is someone going to actually interact and engage with this space. And often buildings go up because they're thinking the investor. But what I love about what Lantera is doing, and I think actually Toronto has some of the best builders in the world, because they do consider, how is this space truly being lived in and being utilized. My apartment in New York is an example. What New Yorkers do quite a bit is they take outdoor space into consideration. So that's, my place always had like great outdoor space that you could utilize, because you just don't get a lot of that. And I find in New York, what happens is it's based on neighborhood. So if you're in Tribeca, there's always like a huge playroom, because usually it's families that are living in the apartments in Tribeca, or on the Upper West Side. So they do it, I feel like, more based on neighborhood than they're actually thinking about, how space will be utilized. They're like, okay, we're going to have families in here, so we're going to do like an enormous play area. So it's a little different. Also, less space. I would say New York, you're dealing with a little bit less space. It's rare that I've seen 20,000 square feet of amenity space in New York City.
Right.
Natasha, that's almost like, I look at Natasha, the Residences, and I think to myself, what a great PR project, on a residential scale. It's almost like you're taking, all your years of experience and your life experience, and your local neighborhood experience, and packaging up in a package that's, really hard to refuse.
It was incredible. I mean, when Mark approached me, it was January 2020, and Mark has so many really interesting ideas. I think he's one of the most brilliant marketers out there. And he's like, I have a crazy idea. What do you think about, naming a building after you? Let me tell you about this project. And I was stunned at first, because I'm like, really? And then he, it made sense when he was saying, like, you've been in this area for 20 years, you're accomplished, and a lot of people, from what he was saying, really look up to that sense of accomplishment. And how do you sort of bring all of that to life? And we were able to do that with Natasha the Residences, because I'm a big believer in work-life integration. I think you have to love what you do, you live it, you work it. All of my work friends are also my friends. And so there's no separation for me. And so that was one of the things that we really looked at with the building as well, is how do you create that sense of community across the board and bring everything together.
So your background is public relations. Your success has really been in public relations. Your reputation is all built through that. And I heard you're now being asked to get involved in a real estate project. And correct if I'm wrong, but no history of being involved in real estate projects. Like you didn't have a career in real estate before you had a career in PR, did you?
Well, no. So what we've worked with developers in the past. So before I got asked to collaborate on Natasha the Residences, Lantero was a client for about 4 years already at that point, 4 or 5 years. And we work with some of the biggest developers in the city. So I certainly have experience in that space. Where I felt like I learned so much with this project was the inside out. We look at, okay, when you look at, a project that's coming to life, you get it once it's almost sort of thought through. With this, we're thinking it through from the very beginning, the very, very early stages. And so it was just a little bit of a different twist. And the talk that I did at Buzz was around the humanizing of a brand. And what made this project successful is that there was actually a person that could consult on how someone would truly live in this space. Because when you look at a lot of the projects out there, you might have a celebrity aligned with it. You might just, name it, based on the number of the street. So how do you actually give the building a heartbeat? And so with this project, that's what we were able to do, because it's based on how someone truly lives their life in this neighborhood. And I think that's why we all had so much fun with this project, because you're able to actually call on the experience of how you live and integrate that into the entire space. I remember there was an iteration of the building that I saw. It was the first draft of the outside of the building. And I remember saying to Mark, I said, you can't do that. I'm claustrophobic. And just looking at this makes me feel claustrophobic. No one's going to want to be in this building. And so we went through a few different iterations of that. So now when you even look at the outside of the building, you have the north side of the building feels almost a bit masculine. And then the south facing side of the building has a bit of a curve and it feels a bit feminine. And so, even that has a story where I feel, being in business for 20 years, I sometimes feel like a man and I sometimes feel like a woman. You're just constantly navigating, that fine line. And so it's been kind of interesting, the masculine and the feminine kind of coming together as well.
I think these days you might need a third side of the building too.
Fair enough.
Absolutely. So Natasha, it's obvious that you have a love of real estate,